the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Today's episode will be going over what's on our minds, followed by a feature review of Mission Impossible Fallout. Then we'll be going over the results of our most recent Casually Criterion themed poll. So join us.
Yay. Yeah, we put out the poll on our Facebook and Twitter, so if you want to follow us on there and interact with our polls and ask us questions, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, and you can always email your questions to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And also, don't forget to go onto iTunes and give us a 5-star review, and then write a little bit about the show, what you like. Even if you want to write what you don't like, that's okay, as long as you give a 5-star review.
Preferably.
Yeah. And
sorry, didn't mean to throw you.
No, it's okay. And whatever app you use to listen to podcasts, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get all of our episodes as soon as they drop.
Thank you so much. Any kind of feedback you guys have just makes the show better.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Those two things are the things that really help our show grow.
Are we ready to move into what's on our minds?
Yes.
Can't wait.
Hey, real quick, I just wanted to pop in to let everyone know that we are going to be talking about Star Wars casting announcements that were released by Disney. Then we will go ahead and speculate about rumors, which we do not consider spoilers, but for all of you who don't want to hear any of that kind of stuff, we do talk about Star Wars for the first few minutes. You can go ahead and skip ahead to the timestamp in the show notes if you want to not listen to any of that. Thanks. So real quick, before we move into our individual thoughts, I wanted to go ahead and talk about some Star Wars news. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I don't know. We never talk about Star Wars on this podcast.
I know.
Actually, we haven't in a
It's
while.
unheard of. It's true. It has been a minute, so we're due.
Okay, fine then.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add this to the show notes. It's an article on our friends at cinelinx.com. But essentially what it says is Star Wars Episode 9 is gearing to film soon. And we have some returning cast members, which include Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Lupita Nyong'o, Domhnall Gleeson, all the regulars. But the surprises, I guess, are that we have Mark Hamill confirmed returning, which up until now, they've been kind of playing coy with it, even though I think everyone thought he was returning. But this is the first confirmation, right?
Yeah.
We also have Billy D. Williams returning as Lando. And I think the big shocker, I guess, which is how they're going to go about handling Leia. And it turns out they're actually going to use unused footage from The Force Awakens that they filmed and never really saw the light of day because it was cut. And they're going to use that footage somehow implemented into Episode 9 to wrap up the whole story. So
the footage is specifically from The Force Awakens? There's not footage from Last Jedi?
That's what they've said, but I wouldn't be surprised if they use everything they possibly can.
Right.
I don't know. I also wouldn't be surprised if, this is just personally speaking, Disney is planning to use like a body double with the help of makeup and CGI to help flesh out the scenes and make them complete.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, if they're reusing footage that was deleted from The Force Awakens, there's no way they could fit that into like an Episode 9 in an organic way, right? Unless they pull some trickery with other actors and doubles and stuff as well, right?
What if they shot an alternate scene where, spoiler alert for Star Wars Force Awakens, Leia confronts Kylo Ren instead of Han?
I don't think they did that, but what I would, I think what I remember hearing is there are scenes where Leia was doing a politician type thing and like talking to people about the First Order and how dangerous they were or something, or I don't know. There was stuff that they cut where she had like a whole nother plot line, apparently. Yeah. I guess they can try to write Episode 9 around that. They've been using her daughter and her brother and Mark Hamill to kind of like sell everyone on like Carrie Fisher being used in Episode 9 and it's a good thing and she would like this, you know? So I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months from now they were like, we're also going to have the assistance from body doubles and CGI and makeup.
Right.
But they're just not saying it yet.
Her daughter looks very similar to her. She could use her as a body double, I think. I'm okay with them using the footage and stuff like that. And the reason being is each theories that have been put out there is that each movie was going to be one of the old crew's movies, right? So the first one was Han Solo's movie, the second one was Mark Hamill's movie, and then the third one was supposed to be Princess Leia's. And unfortunately,
how come you called him Mark Hamill and not Luke Skywalker?
Oh yeah, well,
when you called Han Solo and Leia by their character names,
because Mark Hamill and I,
questions we need to know.
Yeah, Mark Hamill and I are close buddies. Good friends. So
Mark Ham and you?
Mark Ham, Hammy for short. Yeah. Anyways, but so the third one being Princess Leia's movie. So, and I felt like it was going to be unfinished, or they were going to have to change things up because she had passed away. But I think that they can get it done in the way that they maybe not quite originally intended, but closer to it.
I think the only wrong thing they could have done would have been to kill Leia off between movies.
Yeah.
I just feel like that would not have been very satisfying. So I much prefer this option, even if it doesn't end up being great, than just, a sentence in the opening crawl that Leia has died or something,
Yeah.
I would be very surprised, though, if this is any kind of significant part. What I imagine is going to happen is they're going to use some Leia footage. It's going to be like one, maybe two scenes, and then there's going to be like an interruption from an explosion, an attack or something, and then they're going to have to run away. And then she's going to die like in some kind of attack from the First Order. And
do you think we'll see her die on screen? So you're saying you don't think we'll see her die on screen?
Well, we may not see her physically die, but like we'll see like her scene get interrupted by an explosion, or you know what I mean, and it'll be implied that she died in that moment.
Yeah.
I think they're going to try to do it that way, and then they'll deal with Leia's death in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe, despite what I said of killing her off screen, or off of the opening crawl or whatever, I do think that opening up on a funeral scene for Leia and she's died might be satisfactory in some way.
Yeah, her presence definitely has to be felt in the overall story, but I would be very surprised if they find a way to repurpose her deleted scenes into something worthwhile. And so they're probably not going to want to use it a whole bunch. That's just my theory, but we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on Mark Hamill or Billy D. Williams?
These aren't surprises. I think everyone expected Mark Hamill to come back in some way, but he's been kind of really outspoken about how he's not happy with his character's journey. But now that the movie's being all promoted, he seems extremely excited, and he's calling it like his final chapter. He's like, I'm happy going into my final chapter with like Carrie Fisher's footage being used. Like, he put it out on Twitter. So I'm wondering if this episode 9 thing is going to be really fan servicey, and they're going to be doing a lot of things that like Last Jedi, maybe like different direction than Last Jedi was going.
Makes me less interested.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
But still very interested because I've committed. I'm this far in.
I'm not opposed to fan service as long as it's good. I just think Last Jedi, in my opinion, was really profound, whereas like a lot of Star Wars movies don't try to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if the fan service can coexist with something kind of like that, I'd be a lot happier. But you know what? I like The Force Awakens quite a bit. So, maybe J.J. Abrams can wrap it up in a satisfying way.
So, Carrie Russell's in this. Do you guys have any theories as to what character she's going to play? My guess is that she is going to be Rey's mom, just as a wild guess. But what do you guys think?
I don't think they're going to do the Rey's parents thing. At least I hope not. That would be super lame and completely undo The Last Jedi. But they probably will. I've heard rumors that they're also going to try to flesh out Snoke's origin stuff. There's rumblings of that on the internet. You can find it. There's even rumors of Ed Harris.
I'm all about Ed Harris being in this movie.
But that's just a rumor, right? That's just, that's not officially part of this release. People were saying the same thing about Laura Dern, and it was just some character that we'd never met before, except for like a book that was released like 6 months before the movie came out.
Right.
So I'm not even going to speculate. I think Carrie Russell is going to be no one we've known.
Is it still a big rumor that Poe Dameron is gay?
I don't think people have been talking about it lately.
Okay.
But
I was going to say Carrie Russell's going to be his wife, and it's going to be a surprise twist on everybody. I don't know. That's my guess. Just to have a guess. Yeah, so the last thing I want to say about it is that this is one of the things that kind of sucks about Star Wars is that I wish these announcements didn't have to be made. I would rather just go to the movie and see Billy D. Williams in there, or surprised they've used some of Carrie Fisher's footage and Kerry Russell is in it, because I guess I wasn't paying attention at all for Last Jedi, so I had no idea Laura Dern was going to be in it, so that was like a nice surprise. And I wish that it were possible to exist outside of having to know those things. And that gets kind of like the curse of doing a podcast and like then being on Twitter around a bunch of other movie news and stuff, right? I just can't not find out now, but
sure.
Yeah.
Get some of Job's what are those pills that he takes where he forgets?
Forget me now.
Yeah, forget me now. Yeah, go ahead and take one of those.
It's true, but then I'm going to ask you guys to record this episode.
Again? Yeah. No.
Yeah. When are we recording? So then we just have to do it again. All right. So I think that's it for the Star Wars news, right?
Yeah. I don't have anything else.
I'm good.
Cool. So who wants to talk about what's on your mind?
I'll go ahead and go. I watched 2 things this week. One of them was Castle Rock. Have you guys heard about this?
Is it the one with the puppets where they sing and dance?
Mm-hmm, exactly. That's Fraggle Rock, Justin.
Actually, I'd never heard of Fraggle Rock.
Oh, really? Yeah, they have Muppets and yeah. Anyways, it's Jim Henson too. But I did not watch Fraggle Rock. I watched Castle Rock, and it's the new Hulu original based on Stephen King's works, and it's produced by J.J. Abrams and his company Bad Robot, starring among many others. This is a giant cast. Andre Holland, he was in Moonlight that won Oscar a couple years ago, and
nice.
And Bill Skarsgård is in this as well. I watched the first 3 shows of this. And
does he play Pennywise?
No. Well, that's kind of maybe a spoiler, but it's hard to talk about this much without spoiling anything. But I did watch the first 3 shows, and I really enjoyed them. It's about a town where all sorts of bad things happens in this town. Everybody in this town...
Sounds like Pennywise.
Yeah, it is definitely. It's Stephen King territory. The suicide rate in this town is like through the roof, and the main employer of this town, of course, is the Shawshank Prison. So it's kind of like a mashup of Stephen King's works, and I'm not exactly sure how that's going to play out, and I'm sure there's a bunch of Easter eggs that I missed. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and if you like Stephen King's books or movies, I think it definitely ties into this too. So yeah, you should check this out then for sure.
All right. Is it? Did you say that if it was on Hulu or where was it?
Yeah, it's a Hulu original.
Okay, that's
How many episodes are there going to be this season?
Well, that is a good question. I will be right back with that answer.
Okay. In the meantime, is this like a horror show or is this like a?
I wouldn't
drama.
It's a Stephen King, so I would. It's not much different than something like It, right? Where
it's horror.
Yeah, where the horror is underneath everything else that's happening, and how do I describe that? Like, so there's a normal drama going on, but underneath everything, there's this horror and this horrible stuff that's happening. 10 episodes in this season, and so they already have 3 out, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest. So yeah. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Lost, since with the J.J. Abrams in there, and it's a slow reveal of all the characters.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and
I'll have to give that a shot, because actually that did look interesting, but it also looked like it could have gone like either way based on the advertisements, because there's a million Stephen King adaptations out there, and I would say like 80% of them are terrible.
Right. I agree. I've heard good things about it from like critics and stuff that have watched further into it than I have so far.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I'm excited to finish it out.
Yeah, I definitely say wait until you hear word of mouth on Stephen King adaptations. It's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, I always just assume they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
Because most of them are.
Yeah, I actually would say wait till all 10 episodes are out and then just binge them, because I think it plays more like a 10-hour movie. The three episodes I've watched have played that way so far, at least.
Sweet.
Yeah, cool.
All right, the other thing I watched was something that I missed when it first came out. It was Short Term 12.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it stars Brie Larson, Lakeith Stanfield, Rami Malek, and Stephanie Beatriz. It actually has a really good cast. Or at least now they're recognizable. They've all moved on and done different things. This movie is about a group of people working at a foster care facility for at-risk kids, and it's about how they have to deal with the kids' problems, and then they also have to deal with their internal problems. And this movie was so good. Just really excellent acting, truthful, like this. I don't know, like this movie started, I've cried like twice during the movie. It's a really touching movie. And yeah, I can't recommend this movie high enough. This is such a great movie. Have you seen it, Mike?
No, I haven't, but I like Brie Larson. I like Lakeith Stanfield. I like that Rami Malek guy. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the other person he said, but no, I've always heard this movie is great, and everyone pretty much unanimously says it's one of the best movies of whatever year that came out, like 2013 or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is really, really good. You guys should give it a shot for sure. It's also directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, I believe is how you pronounce that, who just recently made another movie with Brie Larson called The Glass Castle. I haven't seen that one either, but after Short Term 12, I definitely want to try that one. It also stars Woody Harrelson and Naomi Watts in it, too, so that's pretty cool.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, right. I bought that one forever ago.
Short Term 12 or Glass Castle?
Short Term 12.
Okay.
No, I haven't heard of the Glass Castle before now, but yeah, Short Term 12 I bought probably a year after it came out, something like that, and it's just sitting on my shelf, and I haven't watched it, so I better go watch it right now. See you guys later.
Yeah, see ya, Justin.
Bye.
Well, do you still want to record the podcast, Mike? Or
yeah, I guess we'll just wait till he gets back.
All right.
Just kidding, I'm here.
Oh, whew.
I didn't go
all
long.
right. Yeah, I edited that whole gap out, so now Justin's back.
So we waited an hour and a half. How'd you like Short Term 12, Justin?
It was great. It was really funny. I laughed, start to finish. Tears in my eyes from laughing so hard.
That's weird. It's not the movie I watched.
I'll go next. So what I watched this week was a documentary on Robin Williams called Robin Williams, Come Into My Mind. Have you guys heard of this movie?
I have. I haven't seen it, though, but I'm definitely interested.
Is it the HBO one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen the ad for it, watching something else on HBO, and yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, it's really good. This was not what I chose to watch. I actually came home and my girlfriend had just started it because she loves Robin Williams. And yeah, I watched the whole thing. It was really good. It went into his early life, how he got started as a comic, how he found the show Mork and Mindy, starting with his appearance on Happy Days. And it went into how he got into a movie career. It has interviews with Steve Martin, Billy Crystal, his kids, plenty of people that knew him throughout the time, David Letterman, and lots of clips from all the movies he was on. And it really goes into Robin Williams as like a tragic character because it seems like he was not capable of like connecting with people unless he was making them laugh, And it seemed like he just couldn't turn that off. And it was like almost a need. He was really needy with his comedy,
Right.
And anyway, it's really interesting, very sad at times, but also I laughed quite a few times from lots of clips and behind the scenes stuff that I'd never seen before. So yeah, truly a enlightening documentary about Robin Williams. If you are at all a fan, I would recommend it.
Does it go into when he meets the gorilla, Coco?
A little bit, yeah.
Man, I love that. I would watch the movie just for that, even if you said the rest was bad.
Yeah, and it talks about a lot of his struggles with being sober a lot of the times. As most documentaries about actors tend to do at some point.
Yeah.
So overall, I'd say it's really good. If you have access to HBO Go or HBO Now, give it a shot. It'll make you want to go back and rewatch a lot of Robin Williams movies.
Yeah. I just watched The Birdcage not that long ago.
Yeah, he's really good in that.
Williams. Yeah, he is. He is. Him and Nathan Lane and Hank Azaria. Everybody's pretty great in it. But at least those two are great. Everyone else is kind of... Gene Hackman's good in it. But anyways, I don't want to talk about Birdcage. I was just saying.
Yeah, that's all I got this week.
And so I guess that leaves me. And so this week I watched a Criterion film that I purchased a while back but just haven't dove into yet. Or I've seen it before, but I haven't actually watched the Criterion edition. And that was Howard Hawks' His Girl Friday, starring Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Mike, I know you've seen this one. Chris, have you seen it?
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, I watched this many, many years ago. I guess probably about 10 years ago. And I believe the version I watched, I got when Netflix was more prominently sending out DVDs and not like almost exclusively online streaming. I've watched it a couple of times since then on the DVD, but this film has basically had an awful DVD life.
Mm-hmm. No good releases ever, anywhere.
None. Yeah, so yeah, you know, Mike, and I assume you know Chris too, but like every time I've seen this movie prior to this time, it's been a extremely subpar release of the film. So I was very excited to watch it again on the Criterion Blu-ray edition, and it did not disappoint. It's great. It sounds great. It looks great. Plays all the way through without any weird like digital artifacts or issues that I noticed.
Sounds like music to my ears.
And it's amazing. And the film is wonderful. It's funny. It's maybe the most fast-paced film in terms of dialogue and quips and jokes.
Yeah, exactly. So tell them a little bit about what the movie's about for people who don't know what His Girl Friday is.
So His Girl Friday was directed by Howard Hawks. He made other films like Rio Bravo and Bringing Up Baby. And it stars Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. Cary Grant is a lead newspaper editor who finds out that his former wife, Rosalind Russell, who is a reporter for the newspaper, is about to leave town that night with a new fiance, and they're going to get married the next day. So he pulls a lot of favors from people and gets her to cover a story before she goes, like do one sort of story. And he knows that she loves like the news business and is potentially going to get hooked into the story and not be able to give it up. And basically he's just trying to keep her in town through doing this newspaper story so that she doesn't leave and he can win her back. And it's a screwball comedy, a romantic comedy. If you like those, this is one of the best.
Yeah, I actually heard about this movie a long time ago from Quentin Tarantino. He actually regarded this as one of like the best romantic comedies ever. And yeah, you know, he's probably right. This movie's great.
Yeah, I love this movie. It's really great. The one-liners are so quick.
Yeah. It's you almost can't catch every joke that happens on one viewing. And it's not because they're clever and subtle and you don't notice them until the second time. It's just because there's so many. It's so fast-paced.
Yeah.
It's like impossible to catch every single word that comes out of their mouths.
Awesome. It's good to hear the Criterion release is worth the wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the other thing that really stood out to me that I was noticing this time, just I guess the change in the world and the way we view films since I watched it however long ago it was, but Rosalind Russell's character is so like powerful and like holds her own amongst a bunch of male actors and holds her own next to Cary Grant. Like she, you know,
oh yeah,
gives just as good as she gets from Cary Grant, right? And it's a very, very strong female role.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm glad you brought that up. It is, yeah, definitely a great role for her and very progressive for the time.
Absolutely. I love that movie.
Cool. And the one last thing I wanted to say, which doesn't have to do with the movie specifically, is that the Criterion edition has a booklet in it, as all Criterions do. They all come with like some sort of booklet that has a critical essay or some sort of transcript of an interview or something, you know, relating to the movie. And this one, when you pull it out and open it up, it actually folds out to like the size of a newspaper, and all of the articles and essays and information is all printed like newspaper articles. So it's basically just a newspaper and it's even on like newspaper paper.
Oh, whoa. So it's the size of a newspaper? I know you sent the pictures to us, but I didn't think it was actually the size of the newspaper.
Yeah, like I guess if you can think about what size those normal booklets are, it folds over twice, so it gets like 4 times as big as that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So maybe not the full newspaper size, but pretty close, like close enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I just thought was a really awesome touch and one of those things that makes Criterion's worth owning and collecting and paying attention to.
Stand apart from the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so the one other thing I wanted to talk about is in relation to an episode we did about 6 months ago. It was our Best of 2017 episode, which I think was that the first episode that you were on, Mike?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. So we recapped our favorite movies from 2017. This was right at the New Year. So one thing we also did at the end of that episode was each give our New Year's resolutions for what we were going to do in regards to watching films or whatever over the next year. And one of my resolutions was to watch all of Krzysztof Kieslowski's The Decalogue, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a 10 one-hour films. So it's basically 10 hours that could be viewed all as one movie, or 10 like separate sort of 1 hour things. I think it was originally made for TV or something like that. But I've always wanted to watch it. It's 10 hours long, so it's a big undertaking. So one of my resolutions was watch The Decalogue this year.
Each film is based on one of the commandments, the 10 commandments, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love Kieslowski's other movies. The Three Colors trilogy, Double Life of Veronique is great. And so I've always wanted to see these. And this weekend, I got some belated birthday present money. And so I took off to Barnes & Noble, where they're having the 50% off Criterion Collection sale. And I bought the Decalogue box set. So I've taken the first step towards completing my new resolution. So now I have this last half of the year to actually watch it, now that I've acquired it.
Yeah, you've got like 5.5 months to spread 10 hours out.
Easy peasy, I think.
Yeah, you could do that. It's no problem.
Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to watch the Decalogue series.
Oh, that's so fitting with this episode.
Yeah, look at me.
Well done.
Yeah.
Very clever, Chris.
Speaking of New Year's resolution missions, how are you guys doing on yours?
Yeah, so mine was to watch all of Twin Peaks. Haven't even started it yet. So, not well. But
yeah. So we're about in the same place.
I've got the entirety of Twin Peaks ready to go. You know, it's sitting there. I just got to do it. So I've essentially gone just as far as you have.
So are you going to start with Fire Walk With Me? Have you decided what?
No, you can't start with Fire Walk With Me. You got to start with seasons 1 and 2, then Fire Walk With Me, and then season 3. So why would you start with the movie that took place after the original run of the TV show?
I thought it was a prequel. It's a prequel to
it doesn't matter. It was released afterwards.
Okay, well, I was just asking you whether you do the prequel
you watch
or
episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars before 4, 5, and 6 the first time.
I know a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
So
they're doing it wrong the first time.
Yeah, you really just go 4, 5, 6, and then stop.
Yeah,
that's the right way to do it, I think. So, what about you, Chris, on the New Year's resolutions?
I have not watched any of them. Fassbender. What was his first name? Rainer
Werner Fassbender. Yeah. Oh, you're embarrassing us. We have a Criterion podcast, and you can't even say his name off the top of your head.
Yeah, Rainer Werner Fassbender. I was going to watch some more of his films, and I have not yet. But I'm sure I can watch one of them before the end of the year.
I think you can. If I can watch 10 hours worth of a thing, and Mike even more than 10 hours, I think, then you can watch one movie. I think you can do it.
Yeah, I have way more than 10 hours. I'm bummed.
Well, I have a second resolution that is like 8 hours long, so we may be close to the same in the end.
What's your other resolution?
The Human Condition.
Oh, yeah.
To watch all of that.
You were feeling bold that day.
I know. I'll do it. I swear. Promise.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing those up again.
You're welcome.
We probably could have gotten away without having to honor those.
We have to be accountable to our promises we make on this show.
All right. So, guys, are we ready to move into our review of Mission Impossible Fallout?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can do that.
Before we move into the review, enjoy this quick promo from our friends Movies with the Mrs Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm TJ.
I'm Serenity.
And we are
Movies with the Misses.
We are a podcast about catching up on the classics we've missed, the new releases, dishing on movie news, and always making fun of ourselves.
Well, more making fun of you.
Hey, come on now. You could say that we are
a podcast about movie fans becoming movie fans.
You can find us on all the podcast apps, including Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, and most importantly, iTunes. Also, hit us up on Twitter,
where you can hashtag tweet at me, yo,
at MWTM Podcast.
Remember, take your missus to the movies before she finds a new mister.
You're not going to find a new mister, are you?
Well, don't test me is all I'm saying.
Your mission. Should you choose to accept it? I wonder, did you ever choose not to? The end you always feared is coming. and the blood will be on your hands. The fallout of all your good intentions.
You had a terrible choice to make in Berlin. One life over millions. And now the world is at risk.
This is the CIA's mission. If he had held on to the plutonium, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
His team would be dead.
Yes, they would. That's the job.
So before we get into Mission Impossible Fallout, just wanted to give you guys a heads up that we're going to be doing a non-spoiler section first. So if you haven't seen the film yet, you can listen ahead. We'll give you a spoiler warning before we move into spoiling, so you can listen for now, stop the film when we start spoiling, go see it, and then come back and finish the episode.
Mission Impossible Fallout was written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, which was his second addition into the franchise. He's the first time a director has returned to the Mission Impossible franchise, so that's interesting. It stars Tom Cruise, Henry Cavill, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, Rebecca Ferguson, and Sean Harris. The IMDb synopsis says, Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, along with some familiar allies, race against time after a mission gone wrong.
I feel like that could be the synopsis for any of the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah.
Or at least 4, probably 5.
A good chunk of it. Basically just the whole series. It could be the synopsis for.
So, bad synopsis.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not wrong.
IMDb.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to have to... It covers it, but that's because it could cover all 3, or 4, 5, and 6 movies, you know. Just because it just covers the one doesn't mean it's a bad synopsis.
I still think it's good because it keeps it vague, man. No spoilers at all in that synopsis.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Who wants to go first into their expectations and thoughts for, Mission Impossible Fallout?
Yeah, so I can go first, but I think we should frame our general opinions with a question that we got from a listener. If you guys are okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jerry Hart, a listener on Facebook, asked us, do you think this movie is the second coming of Christ, like everyone seems to? So we can all give our opinions within that framework, I guess.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So I'll start and I'll say, I don't think it's the second coming of Christ because was obviously The Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, obviously.
So this may be third, maybe fourth. There might have been something good between that one and this one. I don't know.
It's like films were invented. The Wicker Man remake with Nicolas Cage came out, and then Mission Impossible Fallout. But really, movies don't really have that much more interesting stuff than that.
Yeah, all films lead either to or away from The Wicker Man.
So,
anyways, that's inside joke, but not that inside. You probably get it. But no, okay. So no, I mean, I guess this movie is being super hyped up as being great right now. I think if it's not as good as the hype, it's very close because I think this movie is really, really good. It has its problems, but I enjoyed it a lot. I never was not enjoying it. I was never bored. I was just constantly entertained or interested or nervous about one thing or another in the film. So, yeah, I think it basically all of the best parts of 3, 4, and 5 have been kind of rolled into one movie here, in my opinion. Because if you listen to our last episode, there were things that were really great about each one, and each one was kind of missing certain elements from the other ones, but I think they've kind of put them all into one here and made a really well-balanced version of like combining all 3 of those movies together. The one thing I will say, I think technically, from like a technical cinematography filmmaking standpoint, I think this is actually maybe the worst of the Mission Impossible series. And we can talk about that more later if you guys want. But I actually have some examples when we get into spoilers. But for now, what do you guys think?
Yeah, so this franchise, I'll be brief because we just released an entire episode on the Mission Impossible franchise. But yeah, I really love this franchise. I've seen all of them in theaters since I was a little kid. And this was also on my most anticipated movies of the summer episode, on one of my like top 5 most anticipated. So I was definitely really looking forward to this movie. Yeah, so I, wasn't disappointed. I love this movie. This movie is a complete blast. I think it's the best in the series. I think it's the first in the series that really asks the question, who is Ethan Hunt? I think Christopher McQuarrie has upped the bar on IMAX action scenes and stunts. And I would be interested to see what like James Cameron or Christopher Nolan do after this. I think Tom Cruise is an insane person who can do more at 56 than I've ever been able to do. And that's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, you've got time to get to 56, though.
That's true.
You could do a lot between now.
I got a long way before 56. But anyway, I think this makes some of the other past entries in the franchise better and less random in retrospect. And it kind of fixes some of the problems with the series I had as a whole. Anyways, we can get into that soon. But pretty much, I think this movie is so much fun. The action is crazy. And I think I disagree with you about the filmmaking aspects. I think it's definitely made better than 1, 2, and 3, for sure. And about the same as, or on par with 4 and 5. But, I guess I'll have to see exactly what you mean later whenever you go into that. But yeah, Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you guys. My expectations after having watched all the other movies last week were pretty high, and there's word of mouth, so I was super excited to see this. And it didn't disappoint. It was... Movie critics and people always say things like thrilling or a wild ride and stuff like that, but that's what this was. This was a really exciting movie to watch. There's always something on screen going on. And then there's, of course, the side story of watching Tom Cruise do all these crazy stunts. It's like a really good Bruce Lee movie, where it's fun just to watch Tom Cruise do these crazy stunts, but then it's well made and it's got a good story to it. I can't recommend it highly enough. Mike, you saw this in the IMAX. I would imagine that is a much better, like if you have an IMAX to go see it, probably go see it at the IMAX. I think I'm going to try to. I've got an IMAX. It's about an hour away, but I'm going to try to. But go see this in the theater. Like, don't wait till it's on TV. Go see it in the theater.
Yeah,
for sure.
I only saw it in 2D, and I'm going to go see it in IMAX. For sure.
Yeah, I saw it twice. The first time I saw it in the big format, and the second time I saw it just on like a matinee on like the local theater. And the big format was definitely way better. If you can see it in the largest format possible, I would. It definitely merits it, and you can definitely see how much detail and how much is going on in each of these shots. And just it's really insane. So definitely see it on the biggest possible screen you can.
All right, so before we get into spoilers, is there anything that you guys want to talk about, generally speaking?
For me, I feel like this is the first time Ethan Hunt has ever felt like a real person. This takes all of the movies and kind of gives him a complete arc, I think. It ties up a lot of loose ends that felt random and abandoned as the series progressed and kind of brings them up again and tries to answer those unresolved questions in a satisfying way. I think it deals with Ethan Hunt's anxiety that he must save absolutely everyone. I mean, we see his demons and what keeps him up at night, which is nice because I feel like these things have never been focused on. He's always just been the guy who climbs mountains and sometimes decides to get married and never second guesses himself, So I found it very refreshing that this movie focuses on his personal journey. And it really reminds you throughout the entire movie that Ethan Hunt hates losing people. And that sounds like it could be really lame. But in my opinion, it reminds it to you in ways that are very creative, in ways that feel satisfying, and like I said earlier, makes Ethan Hunt really feel like a real character for the first time, in my opinion.
I don't know that I would agree that it's the first time, because I think what they're doing here is an extension of what they've done in one of the other franchises. I don't think it's a spoiler to say which one, right?
No, go for it.
Yeah, so the third Mission Impossible, the J.J. Abrams one, I think what they're doing here is extends and expands beyond that. So I agree that it takes it to a further step and sort of rounds that out, but it's not the first one to do that. I think it's been missing since then.
Right. That's kind of what I was saying earlier, though, which is this is the first time he's felt like a complete character, mainly because it's felt abandoned. And I kind of was being vague earlier, but that's what I was talking about. The whole Ethan gets married subplot of Mission Impossible 3 felt like an outlier, and it felt inconsistent with his entire character, and it felt selfish and wrong, given how the story wrapped up in 4, and they didn't touch on it in 5. Since we've had 2 movies since Mission Impossible 3, I would argue that up until Fallout came out, 3 has been the outlier that feels random and inconsistent with the rest of the series, and thus Ethan Hunt never really felt like a real guy. I think Fallout does a good job of bringing that back in and focusing more on what I initially liked about Mission Impossible 3 that was later abandoned.
Well, yeah, so I think we're basically saying the same thing. My only thing is that it wasn't the first time that this happened.
No, it's not the first time.
To me, it's been missing in 4 and 5. So yeah, I think, I agree that it kind of felt like an outlier, and them to bring it back, I think it's one of the things that goes with what I was saying about they took some of the most unique and best things about 3, 4, and 5 and have put them into one movie instead of 3 having like that one aspect that's only in 3. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And this whole movie feels like, for the Mission Impossible movies, what Skyfall is for the James Bond movies, right? It's like, what keeps Ethan Hunt up at night? Who is he? I think the movie's all the better for it. You're absolutely right. It's the best parts of 3, and then the best parts of like the last 3 movies since 3, or the last 2 movies since 3.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly that it's a burrito. It's a Mission Impossible burrito, and it's all the best from the previous movies as well. And I really appreciate Tom Cruise's performance here. And I think after having watched them all last week, I don't know if it's just Tom Cruise getting older, but he seems wiser and older and more worn out a little bit in this movie. And like, just as a character, he's had enough of these missions. I mean,
he seems tired.
Yeah,
and
tired.
Exhausted.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, I really appreciate that aspect of this as he's getting older. He plays that aspect of it. He is wiser, I think, too. He's more of a tactician as opposed to in the first one and stuff like that. I just really enjoyed Tom Cruise's performance in this as well.
Absolutely. I want to jump off of that real quick because I 100% agree. I think this is Ethan Hunt older. He's had a few years to just wrestle with his demons. Mission Impossible 3 came out in 2006. So if Ethan Hunt is aging along with us, it's been over a decade since he, from his perspective, ruined this woman's life. This is what keeps him up at night. And you see multiple times throughout the movie just him wrestling with like the possibility that he may not be able to save everyone and what it really does to him. And I agree with you. It's like he's just worried more. He's got more anxiety, and he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders at this point,
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Chris.
Okay.
With this installment and what we're talking about now with Ethan Hunt's character, does that make any sort of difference to Mission Impossible 2? If we look at Mission Impossible 1 as where Ethan Hunt goes from sort of mid-tier, no-name agent to saving the day and becoming big-time agent Ethan Hunt. And then in Mission Impossible 2, he's big-headed Ethan Hunt, right? Like he's, Mr. Badass or whatever. 3, he comes down, mellows out a little bit, is going to get settled
tries to
down.
grow up.
So like in terms of the style, the ridiculous style of 2, that makes a lot more sense in Ethan Hunt's total character arc to me. Do you think you could parse that with your dislike of Mission Impossible 2? Maybe make you feel better about it?
I think in general, the way I look at the Mission Impossible movies is 3 starts, it almost reboots the whole franchise to me. And this
movie had callbacks to 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Did you catch them?
Well, don't they always make callbacks to like Ethan hanging, like the hanging scene?
I mean, no, but these were like story callbacks almost.
What did they call back to 2?
We'll talk about it in spoilers. It's pretty minor, but we'll talk about it in spoilers.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see what you're saying, but I think where the franchise really gets good is 3. And so to me, I almost put the first 2 to the side and just look at 3, 4, 5, and 6 as their own thing.
Yeah, I think when you really start breaking down the styles, they fit so well with Ethan Hunt's arc that it makes,
you're right.
I've been
thinking about that since I saw Fallout.
Yeah, well, even after 3, after he, has to leave his wife or whatever, 4 is kind of the fun escapist sort of entry into the series, right? And
it's the least story heavy.
Exactly. And it's him just trying to go out there and do, ignore all of that stuff and just like have fun, right? It's like I'm not going to deal with my problems. I'm just going to go have a good time and get hammered or something entry into the series. Maybe I'm stretching.
It's an interesting theory.
I mean, it's not planned or thought out.
Yeah.
I think, here's what I would say. I think Christopher McQuarrie listening to a lot of interviews with Christopher McQuarrie over the past couple days since I saw Fallout, because, I don't know, I just think it's fascinating, and he's really generous with interviews, and he loves to talk. He talks about how whenever he agreed to come back for the 6th one, he did it under the condition that he could make it a lot more personalized of a story and make it a lot more of an emotional journey for Ethan Hunt, because he didn't want to be the first guy to come back and just do the same thing as he did in Rogue Nation.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different movie from Rogue Nation.
Yeah, the tone is different than all of them, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's a very dark tone compared to the rest of them.
Yeah.
But it's still got some humor all over it, but still, it's darker.
All right, so I think maybe we can move on to spoilers, unless you guys have anything else for non-spoilers.
No, just real quick. I think obviously you've gathered that we all recommend this movie, but yeah, see it in theaters. If you don't have to see the rest of them before you see this one, but I think it'll definitely help. I think watching all of them recently really helps this one pay off emotionally in a way that it may not otherwise have done.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get a chance, you can watch them again, but then, it'll help it pay off quite a bit.
At least 3 onwards.
Yeah, 3 onwards, yeah.
Exactly, because there are scenes in this where they're talking about things that happen in the other movie, and if you haven't seen it, it's just going to be exposition, like they're just telling you what's happened, right. And that probably won't be as good as actually being able to like visualize in your mind what they're talking about. You'd much rather see something than hear someone talk about it in film, and generally speaking, My Dinner with Andre being an exception. So being able to recall the past movies in your head during those scenes, I think will make for a much better experience. So I would recommend watching them first.
Yeah. All right, guys. Are you ready to move into spoilers?
Yeah, let's go.
Yes, please.
All right, let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what. You know how many cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
And here we go.
So, if I may start, because
go for it.
I just want to start tiny specific stuff and then move out. I'm going to address a little bit the whole technical aspect of the film. I think when the movie started, or maybe the first time we see Tom Cruise, where Tom Cruise is in that room, like in the dark, and he gets the mission.
Well, the first time we see him's the dream.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess it opens up with a dream sequence, right?
Yeah, it opens up with his nightmare.
Yeah. So after that, and the first time we see him, like he gets his little mission, I thought like that whole scene looked pretty bad. I thought it was like, at least in my theater, it was really, really noisy, and it really bugged me.
Noisy.
Yeah. Like there was a lot of grain in like the shadows and stuff. And it just, I don't know, it just looked very weird and not that good to me. And it kind of bugged me. So, but I kind of let that go or whatever. And there are other points in the film where I think they had to sacrifice visual quality for angles that would allow you to take in the stunt that Tom Cruise is actually doing, particularly in like the helicopter rides. I thought some of that footage didn't look very good. Overall, I don't think that it matters because that action scene is pretty awesome.
Right.
But the one thing that I feel is a little unforgivable is, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Michelle Monaghan's final scene when Tom Cruise is in like the bed and she's over talking to him, she is out of focus. She's like soft focus for the entire scene, and Tom Cruise is like super sharp focus. And when it's cutting back and forth, I was like, what are you guys doing? How did you miss that? Or not, like, I don't know, maybe go back and reshoot it or something. And it was really noticeable to me, and I couldn't not see it. And it bugged me.
Yeah, I saw it twice. I didn't notice it either time.
Yeah.
So.
Which is why I feel like technically, some reasons are understandable because they wanted to, attach cameras to the helicopters and whatnot, and you can't just attach any camera to a helicopter. Sometimes you got to sacrifice, right? And
well, so they filmed these scenes that, like, Christopher McQuarrie is like really on record saying, like, when they're conceiving these scenes, they don't even go with scenes if they feel like the audience can't see Tom Cruise doing the actual thing. Right? So, like, they're conceived with the intention of showing wide angles or close-ups of Tom Cruise's face in the helicopter. Whatever angles are most necessary to show you Tom Cruise is literally the one doing this thing.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to go for. Like, that's kind of what you're saying. Like, sometimes that sacrifices aesthetic beauty.
Yeah, it does. And I don't remember that happening in any of the other films to this point. But I think they
but
went
the
so
stunts are a lot
gung-ho.
more intricate here.
Exactly. I think they went so gung-ho that they were just like, I don't really care. We want to, as you said, like showcase the stunt in all its glory, even if we are sacrificing a little bit of like good-looking image, which I think they do in some places. So, I do say like technically it's the worst, in my opinion. It has the most like bad-looking shots, and then that end scene just being like a soft focus. I mentioned it to somebody else who saw it in a totally different theater in a totally different state, and they said the same thing. They were like, yeah, I noticed that. So I know it wasn't just my theater. I say that, but for the most part, like, it doesn't matter that it's technically deficient because they're doing it for all the right reasons.
And I would argue that since they're doing it for the right reasons and they accomplish those reasons, it's not technically the worst. It's just aesthetically the worst.
Sure.
Technically,
yeah.
I think it's actually the most amazing one of them all. Technically.
I think that's the wrong word, probably.
But I get what you're saying. I get the sentiment, right?
Yeah, maybe technically is the wrong word.
Yeah. I know what you mean. But that said, I also really like the look of this movie, especially the last third of it, despite that one scene you're talking about, which I don't remember. But I remember the scene, but not the shot. I think the whole end looks great. I think it looks like the Dark Knight Rises intro, but better, in my opinion. Like, this takes everything Christopher Nolan has ever done and just makes it look pathetic.
Yeah, we're talking about the IMAX stuff specifically.
Yeah, like the whole skydiving sequence, the entire helicopter sequence at the end.
Yeah, well, all that skydiving stuff was real too, right? Like they took like a camera guy out there and
an IMAX camera and strapped it to a dude's head. He's jumped out of the plane in front of Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I saw a shot.
That's all one take too, right?
It's not all one take. There are I think it's 3 or 4 takes digitally cut together.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there is literally a take of Tom Cruise walking from in the plane to out of the plane. And apparently they hand off control of the camera to someone else, remotely. They're controlling, someone else is controlling it while they're in the plane. And then as soon as it's in the air, the cameraman's just feeling it out.
That's so
insane.
I
think the thing I saw, he had the camera attached to his helmet.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, the more you talk about it, the more I am going to have to make plans this week to go see it on IMAX.
Yeah, so one thing I guess that will make this movie all the better is if you've seen this movie and you thought, this is pretty good, but like Jerry Hart said, it's not the second coming of Christ, then what I would say is look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff in here that is practical that you probably did not realize was practical because it's just made so well.
Right.
And you're like, how in the hell could they, do this?
One of the shots I really like is when he's running across the rooftops. It's the one where he breaks his foot in real life. But it's this long take, and it spins around him, and then you jump with him as he goes to the next...
oh, yeah.
And that shot is just so great as he jumps across, and that's really Tom Cruise doing. There's no, green screen underneath him or anything. That's just amazing.
That's where he hits the hits the wall and kind of falls.
Yeah. I think
my whole theater audibly gasped. That's probably the loudest reaction to anything in the movie was that moment.
Yeah.
Real quick, what'd you guys think of Henry Cavill?
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask this question.
I want to ask you guys, where does he rank in the overall villains for you? What do you think of his performance? Let me start real quick.
Okay.
Because I want to get this out before I hear you guys' opinions. I like Henry Cavill. I think his American accent is a little hokey. And sometimes I'm like, was that a bad line delivery? But then I'm like, no, I think he's just so, I don't know, manly and deep-voiced and corny looking in general that it's just the way he is. So I don't think it's a bad performance. I actually think it's quite fun. And he looks like a beast.
Yes. I love how he just lurks behind them all the time. And he's just, every time he's next to Tom Cruise, who is a short gentleman to begin with, and Henry Cavill, or not Cavill.
Henry Cavill.
Yeah, Henry Cavill is so giant next to him. And, the obvious moment is in the trailers when he does that little arm thing, just
loads his arms.
Yeah, it's so awesome. But I just love his presence in this film, and I think he also brings some levity to it. As kind of thwarting Tom Cruise at every moment. Not on purpose, but at the beginning. Anyways,
he's a good foil.
Yeah, good foil. He's the opposite of Ethan Hunt, kind of. anyways,
do anything for the mission and take anybody down.
Yeah, Ethan Hunt's the scalpel and Henry Cavill's the hammer.
The brute force, it's so awesome. And I just love him hanging out in the background. That's kind of, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. What do you think, Justin?
I'm going to side with what you were saying at first, Mike, because I actually really didn't like him in it. I thought there were times that, there are times that he does what he needs to do well, like when he's fighting and stuff, like he looks great. But there were times, a lot of times, I think that I had that feeling of that didn't seem very good. In terms of that felt like acting to me, and I didn't quite buy it. There were times that it sort of reminded me of the moments in Justice League where you hear him delivering a line or a joke as Superman, and you can almost see the gun that's pointed to his head, making him deliver this line that's clearly bad and written poorly. Obviously it's not written poorly here in Mission Impossible Fallout, but it made me think back to those times, to those parts of Justice League. And,
it reminded you of a worse movie.
Yeah.
That you watched once.
Yeah. And so I don't know if maybe it is the American accent. I honestly didn't even know enough about him to realize that he wasn't American.
He sounds that way when he's British too. That's why I say it. I think he's just he's so stupidly handsome and
yeah.
He's like a corny fake cartoon character.
Yeah, he's the Clark Kent version.
Yeah, he's like Superman. It's
yeah. It's pretty much. I was going to say the Clark Kent version of John Hamm. If John Hamm was Superman.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Henry Cavill.
But I don't know. I liked him. After I acclimated to his role in this, I thought it was just fun.
Well, I think the other thing too is he's good for a while, but I think once Sean Harris comes in, there's a clear gap to me between the quality of villain.
Quality of villain?
Yeah.
Well, that's...
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I love the third act, how Rebecca Ferguson's character, Ilsa Faust, got the Sean Harris character, and Ethan Hunt focused on Henry Cavill's character. I like how they did that.
Yeah, I like the helicopter chase. As far as I'm concerned, they could have just stuck the remote in a box and sent it with a really good helicopter pilot. I mean, because Henry Cavill he didn't even fly the helicopter.
That's true, but he was hanging out of his plane shooting a gun. Apparently that was really him, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. But yeah, I think, so you asked about ranking. I would put him probably slightly above Mission Impossible 2's villain.
Ouch.
Which is slightly above Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol's villain.
I think...
Ouch again.
I think he's better than that. And... just merely his presence, maybe not his acting and stuff, but just merely his presence for me makes him fun.
There's some funny stuff that comes out of him. The whole bathroom scene I thought was really great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Where he shoots the guy that they're trying to get the face scan from, and then he's like, well, in order to...
Oh, no, she shoots him.
Oh, yeah, she shoots him.
He breaks their computer, though.
Yeah.
No, that's what he does. Computer. Yeah.
What did you guys think of Rebecca Ferguson? We talked about Michelle Monaghan and how it furthered her story, but I actually think that a lot of that also furthered the Rebecca Ferguson storyline too, and I thought that those two things tied in really well together because it felt like Tom Cruise is now able to move on and to move on with Rebecca Ferguson too.
Yeah, I thought everything with her was really interesting. The whole thing with her having to make sure that Sean Harris gets back through, I guess, nefarious, less legal means, in order to get him back to MI6. I thought all that was super interesting. That's where the movie really turned up a whole nother notch for me when he realized she's got to do something different with Sean Harris than what Tom Cruise needs to do.
Yeah, their goals are not aligning.
Yeah, so that's kind of you're how are they gonna, do something that accomplishes both their goals? Is that possible? Is one of them gonna have to lose?
Yeah, I really enjoyed all of that, too. I think Rebecca Ferguson is the new bright, shining star in this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoy that the relationship between her and Ethan Hunt has been romantic, but not physically and not classically romantic. It's more about mutual respect and, relying on one another versus actually, courting one another and going on dates and being attracted to one another.
Yeah. It's not like him and Tandy Newton in Mission Impossible 2 where it's just cranking the sexual tension between the two
exactly.
up to 11.
Exactly. And he never has to save her for any reason.
Yeah.
And she's never in danger to motivate him for any reason.
I actually read or heard somewhere, I'm not sure where, but that they they have a rule now for the Mission Impossible movies. There are no females, like damsels in distress.
They said Emily Blunt on Edge of Tomorrow taught them that. And ever since then, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise have a rule that says, never fridge women.
Yeah, no damsels in distress. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And, man, I'll tell you what's infectious about all of this. Like, looking at all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I went back and I popped in my Rogue Nation Blu-ray and started listening to the commentary. What is infectious about this particular franchise is Tom Cruise's enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, he is the producer on all of these, and he's always referencing spy movies and homages. Like, the plane sequence in Rogue Nation, he has on the same suit as Cary Grant had on in North by Northwest. He's always talking about, references to this, references to that. He always wants to make sure that he makes the best movie possible for audiences. He's doing insane stunts that he doesn't have to do. He could get a stuntman to jump off a building. Like, it's one thing to learn how to, like, hold your breath or learn how to fly a helicopter, but it's another to be a 56-year-old man getting punched and jumping onto buildings and landing on your ribs.
Yeah, he's an entertainer first. He wants to entertain us very much, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that kind of enthusiasm really is infectious.
Yeah, even if you don't know about it, I think it's something that comes through in the filmmaking. And I think another example of that is if you look at Harrison Ford, and as much as I love Force Awakens, he was, if I remember correctly, he's not that big on Han Solo as a character. Like, Star Wars weren't films that he loved.
Right.
Having done. And I think that slightly shows in his performance in, like, The Force Awakens, whereas if you look at something like Blade Runner 2049, because he loved Decker, he loved the Blade Runner movie, and there's just a charisma, even if you know nothing about all of that, there's just a charisma that's just present and there when you watch something like Blade Runner 2049 and him going back to that character versus Han Solo in Force Awakens. And
that's a really good observation, yeah.
Yeah, this shows with Tom Cruise in these Mission Impossible movies too. Like, there's just that charisma that's there, unspoken, no matter if you've watched the behind the scenes or not.
This is his baby, so obviously, like, he wants it to be impressive, but like I said, he could still sell. Like, Tom Cruise did his own stunts, and all he really needed to do was fly a helicopter, and like, he could have said, did a lot of his own stunts, and they could have still sold the movie on that kind of stuff, but he did all of his own stunts that they would let him do, and that's just, I don't know, I really appreciate it, and I think apparently based on the box office numbers and the word of mouth, other people do too, This
was the biggest Mission Impossible, I believe, opening.
Yeah, it had the biggest Mission Impossible. Everyone's been saying it's the best movie since Fury Road, and the only reason Fury Road is regarded as such a masterpiece is because, like the Mission Impossible movies, it's not green screen soup,
Yeah. It's
and when you know
spectacle.
that... Exactly, and when you know that, and they put the work in to entertain you, it really makes all the difference between it. Like, I have never felt as enthralled or exhilarated by a Marvel movie as I have Mission Impossible 6.
100% agree. 200%.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I like Marvel movies, but the action feels so fake and Hollywoody. Like, it's all green screen. It's all very perfectly staged. It feels like, they're not anywhere real. Mm-hmm. But this, it's like you can see the cold on his skin. You can see the breath in the air. You can see Tom Cruise doing this thing. And it really is thrilling. I mean, I know we've used that word, and I know a lot of people use that word, but like, it makes all the difference knowing that, like, Tom Cruise just fell off the bottom of a helicopter and grabbed onto something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus some guy that we don't know, and we just assume that someone put a CGI version of Tom Cruise's face on there. The fact that they're telling us this and they're showing us him do this thing, I think it's really genius in the way they're marketing it.
And on the helicopter stuff, my friend flies a helicopter for a profession, and he was super impressed by it. He doesn't like Tom Cruise in general, but he was super impressed. He's like, Tom Cruise learned how to do this. And he was like, and that stuff isn't easy. Like, it's not like he's just taking off and then landing it. He's flying in very dangerous areas, so it's even that,
fast.
even just the helicopter flying is very dangerous in and of itself, right? It's just insane.
Yeah, considering he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I just know the poor stunt coordinator or whoever's in charge of making sure Tom Cruise makes it through alive, stressed this whole time, and
has an ulcer.
Yeah, has an ulcer.
So another film that I saw recently was Skyscraper with The Rock, and I think to the point of how much like having these real stunts and real things in a film like goes to is like Skyscraper is completely boring the whole time. Like all of the action intense stuff is just so boring because there's so much CG, green screen. You know, it's not really The Rock like in a real place that exists. Like you even know that like the building isn't even a real building, right? the skyscraper of the film, right? And so there's just a world of difference. And I hope that this film and the success of the Mission Impossible series and Mad Max Fury Road and that sort of thing is hopefully raising the bar. Then other people will want to hit that bar, right? Because I think Skyscraper like tanked, right?
I mean,
I don't think it did well.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, not that it matters, but it matters in the sense that like maybe the people will take notice if something like Skyscraper is failing. Like, why is Skyscraper failing?
Well, keep in mind here, too, so Tom Cruise broke his foot doing a stunt, and it was out. They had to stop shooting for 8 weeks. They did have insurance, but I believe... so the movie cost a lot more than it was going to cost originally because he's doing his own stunts and because they couldn't shoot anymore. There's such a great risk at doing this that I don't think anybody's going to think that it's worthwhile. Huh?
They'll make it back.
Oh, yeah. It made, like... big money internationally this weekend too.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, yeah.
So that personally makes me so happy not because I like Tom Cruise one way or the other, which I do like him as a performer, but what I would say is I want work like this to pay off. Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise worked so much harder on this movie than I feel like most filmmakers and actors do on mainstream big budget movies, right? Like they worked harder than The Rock has worked on anything. I bet, on this movie, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, I want this to pay off. I want this to be a big hit, just for that reason alone. Just to inspire other filmmakers, you know?
Yeah. So I guess we haven't talked about Sean Harris at all. I thought he was just as good in this as he was in Rogue Nation. His character has even more interesting stuff going on. So in that sense, to me, it was a little better. But what did you guys think?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask you, in our recap episode for the entire series, you said that he was your favorite Mission Impossible villain, or could be, depending on how Fallout went. What do you think now?
I think he confirmed it. I think he's got really interesting stuff going on. There's something about the whole idea that he's going to set the world anew by detonating these bombs in this like little mountain encampment thing, but the fact that he's not setting those bombs and detonating them remotely, like the fact that he's just sitting there, like in that camp waiting for it to happen, so he's going to go down in flames.
That was all
with
good.
It. Like, there's just something that's so like kind of badass, but also kind of terrifying from like as a villain.
Yeah, and he has cool beard and slick back hair.
Yeah.
He's got a really great presence. Yeah, I agree. I think Fallout cements him as the top like villains in the franchise, but I'd also say I think Henry Cavill makes a really great impression despite, I'm not going to say bad acting, I'm going to say hokey acting.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. And I would say I would put Sean Harris up there as the best villain.
Now for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And maybe that's because he's the only villain that's had 2 movies, but so he has maybe a little bit more depth of character because they've had longer to kind of iron that stuff out. But
2 movies, 1 arc, though.
Yeah, and that's true. But yeah, Sean Harris, and then also I really like Henry Cavill as well. So
yeah, agree all the way through with what Chris said, and Justin. I think Sean Harris is great.
So what did you guys think of the other returning cast members? At least we've talked about Rebecca Ferguson a bit, but Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames.
Yeah, I think Simon Pegg was the best thing that ever happened to this franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
He brings the perfect amount of levity. He gets one of the best moments in the entire movie that both times I saw this got a reaction from the audience, and that is the mask fake out, the second one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that one where they get Henry Cavill, that scene is brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It works really well. It works really well with a gag that I am wondering how many more times they can get away with in this franchise.
They got me both times in this movie with it. The intro one got me too. And I also loved how we didn't see the opening credits until like really far into the movie after they pull the first mask gag.
Right.
That was great.
Yeah, I think there's a great bit with it where they're saying Simon Pegg has to wear the mask, and he's like, why do I have to wear it? And the other option is Ving Rhames.
Yeah. He just like points to his body, and he's like, it's so great.
Yeah.
I think you're right about Simon Pegg being the best thing to happen to this franchise. He's so good. And a few months back, Tomb Raider came out, and Nick Frost was in it. And we were kind of talking about Nick Frost and what we wanted from him in Tomb Raider. But this is what I wanted from him in Tomb Raider is, like this sidekick that kind of goofs around and brings levity to it. Obviously,
she could have used a sidekick in that movie.
Absolutely. But anyways, he's just so great in this movie. Both him and Ving Rhames, and it's fun to see them again.
Yeah, so I was mentioning earlier that this movie kind of like ties in all the rest of the movies.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Makes it seem more like the series has more continuity than it ever has before.
Mm-hmm.
I think bringing Luther back in this one is great. The past couple, Luther has been kind of just sitting on the sidelines, not doing a whole lot.
Right.
This one, they give him stuff to do. He gets some of the best emotional scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Where they use his character to basically fill you in on who is Ethan Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, he gets the scene because Ethan is running around doing Ethan Hunt stuff, and he has the scene with Rebecca Ferguson.
And Michelle Monaghan.
Yeah, exactly. To tell her about, like, his marriage to Michelle Monaghan, and he has the scene with her when she finds out what is going on and what Ethan Hunt's doing and what's there. Like, he's got a lot to carry, and I think he carries it pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Luther is Ethan Hunt's oldest friend at this point. And I think the series wisely uses that to its advantage in this movie.
Yeah.
I think Christopher McQuarrie understood that fans want Luther to be there, and they want Luther and Ethan to get this kind of closure. At least I always did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy with this movie just for like the sheer Ethan Hunt character work they put in.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, what was the tie-in? You said that there was a specific tie-in to 2 and 1.
Yeah, there's tie-ins to all of them. So the tie-ins for the last 3 Mission Impossibles are all pretty obvious, right? But Mission Impossible 1, when he goes into that area with the White Widow, she's talking about how her mother was Max, which was Vanessa Redgrave from the first movie.
Okay.
And how she passed on the business to her, but Max always envisioned a future to where her unique services were no longer needed. And then later you find out the White Widow is a go-between for the CIA and black market dealers and stuff like that. But ultimately, they brought a really nice callback into the first Mission Impossible by bringing up a character that hasn't been brought up since the first one, which I appreciated.
Mm-hmm. And the one for Mission Impossible 2?
So the second one is just really minor in that Ethan Hunt can climb mountains, right?
Oh,
at the end of the movie, he climbs rocks. And we know that this is what Ethan Hunt does for fun, Chris.
That's right. I did notice that.
Cocky, big-headed days. Yeah.
But ultimately, that is... Rocks. Yeah, and I guess they've used his motorcycle skills in the past couple Mission Impossibles, but...
In that sense, there is a scene where they have to, they're driving or something, and they crash through a bunch of birds and make them fly around. So that's also a nod to Mission Impossible 2, John Woo.
That's true, but I feel like this one's more of this is a skill that Ethan Hunt has kind of thing, because they did make him in this one. Ethan Hunt can't do everything. He couldn't fly a helicopter. I mean, he can because he figures it out, but in theory, he didn't know how. He didn't take off. He just hijacked it in the air.
He couldn't jump all the way across to that other roof successfully.
Yeah, so they don't make him invincible, right?
Yeah, well, that actually takes us to a listener question.
Okay.
If you guys are ready to move into those.
Yeah,
sure.
Let's do it.
So this one is from Colin at Cinefilm2DVD on Twitter. And he says, absolutely love this movie, even with the running time being as it was. It never felt stretched or drawn out. My minuscule grumble would be why Ethan was made to look so inadequate during the men's room fight scene. Fist emoji. That was at the end of his little fist.
I had to make sure and include that because I wanted to cite his question exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so as you're saying, they don't make Ethan capable of doing everything and just awesome at everything. So I agree that they basically made him get his butt kicked in this bathroom fight scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I think we're hitting on why, basically.
So I'll kind of hop on that. I think the reason they do that is for the sheer fact that it's just more interesting that way.
Yeah, it's the Superman versus Batman.
Yeah.
Like, which one is more interesting to watch in a movie? Superman is invincible, so he's not very interesting.
Also, I think Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise have a really good back and forth to where they trust one another. And I think Christopher McQuarrie is a smart enough filmmaker to realize that it makes Ethan more interesting if he's vulnerable. Also, Ethan has to fail from time to time so the other team members can do something good. Look at Rogue Nation. There's a point where Ethan Hunt dies just so Rebecca Ferguson's character can save him. And that way you can understand that they are equal.
Right. It also pays off the end sequence where he has to fight Henry Cavill, who we've seen be much better at beating people up, right? So it pays it off at the end.
And also, in my opinion, they're leaning into his aging. They're leaning into his anxieties and his fears and him getting older in this one. And I think it makes it better because this is like him as an older man, or not over the hill yet, but like as an older man looking back on, his life and kind of asking the question, who is Ethan Hunt? And ultimately, I think it's more interesting if he's still not like in his prime or if he still struggles with things from time to time. And even if he is the best, he's only the best because he refuses to give up, not because he just knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good answer, in my opinion. And I agree.
Real quick, did you guys like the scene whenever he climbs the rope for the helicopter finally, and he like finally gets into the back seat, and he's like, ha! And there's like a guy just chilling in the back seat of the helicopter, like, whoa!
Yeah, where'd you come from?
And there's like two beats where they like stare at each other for a minute.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was funny. Man, the part when he falls back down like the rope and falls down onto like the payload thing that
the
helicopter's carrying, that was like, I think probably the other big like point in the theater where everyone was just like, holy shit. Collectively.
Just like an audible gasp.
Yeah. All right, so next question. This is from Movie Geek and Proud Podcast at MGNP Podcast on Twitter. And they say, this may have been explained or not, but when the crew heads into the final act with no trust in the CIA, how do they travel to Kashmir without CIA assistance? We just see them in the Jeep driving to the camp. Did they fly there with whose help? So yeah, I don't have an answer to this one because I think it's one of those things that you can kind of pick at and pick apart if you choose to.
Sure. I think this is just one of those things where, they probably could have had a 5-minute scene explaining such a thing. And it wouldn't have been that much trouble to shoot or do, but it would have slowed down the pacing. So I think ultimately it just comes down to, if you just kind of be hand wavy with it and just understand that these are really resourceful people,
yeah,
then that's probably better.
They've got like caches of stuff everywhere. I'm sure they have
That's true.
airplanes somewhere that they can...
In the past two movies, there's been like hidden IMF caches in every country.
Yeah.
Maybe they got help from Rebecca Ferguson because she was technically working for MI6, so they might have had trust in MI6 versus CIA.
That's true. There you go. Bing, bang, boom. If not, they can just steal one for the greater good.
I'm sure Tom Cruise could just fly it. Or Ethan Hunt.
No, Ethan Hunt didn't know how to fly a helicopter, but he might know how to fly a plane.
Oh, I think you fly helicopters and airplanes differently.
I'm sure that's true. But whatever. Yeah. Someone on that team can find a plane, I'm sure.
Okay, so next question. This is from Facebook. It's from Mickey Chiachi or Kiachi. I'm not totally sure. Kiaki. I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Sorry, Mickey.
He's from the Three Friends Go Criterion. I'm sure he wants us to mention that.
That reminds me, check out Movie Geek and Proud Podcast and then Three Friends Go Criterion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a two-parter question. The first one is, did you find the plot to be significantly less convoluted than is usual for this series? I don't know if it's any more or less. Maybe slightly less.
I'd say less, except for one scene where like 3 or 4 twists happen right in a row, and it's crazy.
Yeah, that felt a little bit of whichever Pirates of the Caribbean it was. I guess the third one where there was like a ton of switches. Allegiance,
except better than that, because this is a movie about spies, so you expect double crosses and twists, versus a movie about pirates where you're like, God, this is annoying.
I expect to be double crossed by a pirate, actually.
Maybe so, but ultimately I would say it's probably just as plotty as 5, maybe a little less, but all the really, really plot-heavy stuff that might get confusing or convoluted really happens within like one 10-minute scene.
Yeah. It seemed easier to understand and follow, I think. Like my brain was a little bit more switched off than it is in some of the other ones, especially like 1.
Yeah, I would say that if you're confused for any amount of time, you're not going to care because in about 20 minutes, there's going to be Tom Cruise doing something awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So the second part of his question is, there seemed to be much more of an emphasis on hand-to-hand combat than in previous entries. How do you feel about that in general, and do you think the fight scenes were well executed?
I'll let Chris go first.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I noticed that there's more hand-to-hand combat. For sure.
In the bathroom fight.
Yeah, in the bathroom fight and the last sequence after they get out of the helicopters, lots of hand-to-hand. I loved the bathroom fight. I thought that was amazing. So, yeah, I thought that was really good.
The bathroom fight was good. I thought the end scene, once they were done with the helicopter things, I think going from that helicopter chase to hand-to-hand combat is a little underwhelming, in my opinion. I was kind of just ready for them to, be done with it or resolve it in some other way, or resolve that very quickly. I didn't want to see them fight for very long, and I don't think they did. I don't remember that being too long.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, I think.
Yeah.
But it's certainly the least
I didn't find much fatigue there. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying I didn't find much fatigue there because I think it's pretty short. If it had gone on much longer, I'd agree, just because the movie in general is exhausting.
Yeah.
For sure.
But to answer that question, yeah, I think there is more of an emphasis built on at least that particular fight scene in the bathroom, for sure. I think Christopher McQuarrie wanted that bathroom fight to be brutal, and mission accomplished. There's lots of shades of the Raid in there.
Yeah.
Well, I think with Henry Cavill's character being what it is, as we said earlier, he's the hammer as opposed to Ethan Hunt's scalpel. And I think when you have that character in a movie, you need scenes that showcase that. And so I think that bathroom scene is pretty necessary to establish just how tough. Yeah. Yeah, the differences. Yeah. There you go.
Our next question is from listener Buddy Cattell from Facebook. Well, actually, he basically just wants to know how Ving Rhames' character, Luther, passes the time in between Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, well, he doesn't specify Ving Rhames' character. He just says Ving Rhames.
Well, I assume he's asking
he wants
about
to know
Luther.
what the actor does. Maybe he shoots other things. I don't know.
Yeah, I assume the actor just keeps on acting when he can.
Yeah.
And Luther, I imagine he just does IMF stuff now. I guess in the first one, he wasn't an IMF agent. He was an ex-IMF agent, I think. Or an ex-agent who got in trouble.
Yeah, he'd hacked into something.
Yeah, but now I think Ethan Hunt just reformed him through the power of being noble.
In some ways, I feel like he just sits by his phone waiting for that next Ethan Hunt call.
Waiting for Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
Waiting for that next impossible mission.
Because he's always just right there and always helping out. And just seems like you never really hear him say, like, well, I had a trip to Legoland with the kids this weekend, but I'll go to Kashmir and help you defuse this nuclear bomb. He always is just right there. I feel like he doesn't do anything else.
You're probably
He
right.
might smoke cigars.
I'm sure he does that.
You get that vibe?
He smokes cigars and
like
hacks into computers and stuff.
Yeah, and is really good at finding faces based entirely on drawings that Ethan Hunt did.
Yeah.
That's a Rogue Nation reference.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question we've got is from Nicole Kapowski from Facebook. She asks, did you notice Tom's incredible wardrobe? For example, the suit at the club and his tight black pants towards the end? If you didn't notice these things, I can call in and go into detail for y'all. Well, that's not necessary, Nicole. We definitely noticed how Tom Cruise looked.
I always
Very cool.
notice the tightness of Tom Cruise's pants, be it Mission Impossible or
that
Edge
is
of
the
Tomorrow,
the true
talk show.
Impossible mission is to not notice.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree.
He always looks cool as shit in everything he wears in these movies. So I definitely noticed.
Yeah. This whole series is just Tom Cruise looking cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, last question.
One last question from In Session Film at In Session Film on Twitter. You only get to watch one action set piece for the rest of time. From any of the MI films, which do you choose? I think it'd have to be the what is the fourth one? The one in the fourth one. Ghost Protocol. Yeah. when he's climbing the building. Definitely has got to be that one, I think. What about you, Mike?
It would have been that one before this movie came out, but now it's a toss-up between the skydiving scene and the helicopter scene. I'm not sure which one's better at this point, but it's got to be one of those.
Yeah, out of those, I would say the helicopter scene was better, at least on my experience of seeing it in sort of a regular screen. I imagine there's something more to the skydiving scene in IMAX than there is just on a regular size screen.
Yeah, probably so. I definitely, the whole movie just looks amazing in big format. I noticed it significantly less in the normal format. So again, yeah, I can't reiterate enough. See it in big format if you can.
Cool. And so for my choice, just to make Chris mad, I'm going to choose the one that has the most slow motion birds in it from Mission Impossible 2. I don't even care which one. Just the more slow motion birds, the better. I assume there's slow motion birds in that big motorcycle action scene in the end where they play chicken and run into each other.
There's certainly slow motion.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's absolutely slow motion.
You're not making me mad, man. You're just punishing yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that does it, right, for our Fallout discussion. I think we've talked about that aplenty.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say this is going to be one of my top movies of the year at the end of the year, most likely.
Yeah, I feel like this is a trend with this year, but every movie it feels like that we see, almost every, like, we're like, man, this is one of the best movies this year, and if it's not on the list, we're going to be real happy because that means something else is better. It has come out and knocked it off the list. But there's been a lot of good movies this year.
That's true. There's been some bad ones, too. Remember Red Sparrow? We didn't say anything about that.
That's true. But there's been a lot of good ones.
That's true. There has been a lot of good ones. Also, I don't think Red Sparrow's terrible. Listen to our episode.
Yeah. So, speaking of past episodes, a couple of episodes ago, we put out a bonus Casually Criterion episode on Dead Ringers, and in that we introduced our new method of picking Criterion films, which is we're putting out a theme. We're each putting out a theme, and we put the poll out on Twitter, and we have our winner of that poll.
So the three themes we had to choose from on the poll were cruisin', espionage, and if you choose to accept it. If you hadn't guessed, we decided to go off Mission Impossible themes this month. So Justin, what ended up winning the polls?
Okay, so third place in the poll was if you choose to accept it at 26% of the votes.
I just want to say that I'm disappointed in you all. That was my pick, and I can't trust humanity anymore.
I'm pleased with you all that you put Chris's as last. I just didn't.
Yeah, you could take Chris's disappointment if you choose to accept it and disregard it.
Oh, that's not
choose
cool,
to not
guys.
accept it.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, second place was Cruisin' at 36% of the vote. And the winner was Espionage with 38% of the vote. So pretty tight race between the two good options.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right.
So Espionage won.
Yeah. So basically what this means is we take the theme of espionage and we each find a film within the Criterion Collection that fits this theme.
And that we haven't covered yet on the show.
Yeah. Without further ado, are we ready?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So Justin, based on the theme of espionage, which movie in the Criterion Collection do you want to put out there as a potential next review?
All right. So my film that I'm going with is somewhat closely tied in with the film that I talked about earlier, His Girl Friday. It stars Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, and It is Charade.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
A really great movie. It also has Walter Matthau in it and James Coburn. It's a super fun comedy, romance, suspense sort of thing where...
Spy thriller.
Yeah, sort of spy thriller. There's like secret agents and everything fun. Like Audrey Hepburn is super adorable in this movie. Cary Grant is a lot older than Audrey Hepburn, but charming enough to pull it off, I think. And yeah, this is just one of my favorite movies in the Criterion Collection. It's probably the most fun movie in the Criterion Collection, or at least one of like the probably like top three most fun movies that I've seen.
One of.
Yeah,
yeah. There's a lot of movies.
It's a candidate, I think. The most fun. A lot of Criterion movies I wouldn't necessarily categorize as fun. But
No, definitely not.
just in terms of like pure fun.
Salo.
Yeah, I'm looking at you, Solo.
Yeah. So another important point to me is it was directed by Stanley Donen, who directed one of my favorite films, which is Singin' in the Rain. So
wonderful.
If you haven't seen Charade, but you've seen Singin' in the Rain, go off of that and vote for Charade.
Yeah, Charade is a great movie. It was remade into a terrible movie in the 90s with Tandy Newton and Mark Wahlberg called The Truth About Charlie.
Much worse title.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with what Justin just said, but you know what? It happened.
All right. So, Chris, what is your choice of movie?
My choice is Jean-Pierre Melville's Army of Shadows, which takes place during World War II, during the German occupation, and the French have their resistance, and so everything that they have to do to try to spy on the Germans and infiltrate that group.
And resist.
Yeah, and resist. I love Jean-Pierre Melville. He may be one of my favorite directors, and Army of Shadows is just really good. It's like The Godfather before The Godfather was The Godfather, you know. I think it's a good.
Yeah, I've seen this movie too. It's great. It's really, really great. So,
and the other thing I want to say too is any of these films I would love to watch again. I've seen all of them actually, but I would love to watch again, and I'm excited for all three of them. So I don't really care which one wins this time. So vote your heart's desire.
All right, so that brings me to my film. So under the theme espionage, I went with an Alfred Hitchcock classic, also starring Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, and it's called Notorious. This is one of Alfred Hitchcock's espionage thrillers, which is my favorite genre that Hitchcock worked within. I loved his spy thrillers. One thing about this movie that I think is really interesting is it is actually a huge influence on the Mission Impossible franchise and Tom Cruise in general. I've watched a lot of interviews, and he talks about how they actually chose Rebecca Ferguson as Ilsa Faust because she reminded them of Ingrid Bergman.
That's interesting.
Also, Mission Impossible 2 has a really huge homage to a scene in Notorious. So if we're continuing the Mission Impossible theme, you know, it only makes sense to use this one. And also, I would love to watch it again. It's wonderful.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen this one in forever. I watched it way back when. I rented it from one of the Blockbusters I worked at because I heard it was great. And I guess that was probably 12 years ago. So I barely remember Notorious. So I would be very excited to watch it again.
Yeah, so there you go. You have 3 movies to choose from. Again, those movies are Charade with Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant, directed by Stanley Donen. Army of Shadows by Jean-Pierre Melville, about the French resistance. And then you have Notorious with Ingrid Bergman, Cary Grant, directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
You can't choose wrong on this one. Yeah.
Cool.
Have we
so
all seen all 3 of them? Have you seen Army of Shadows, Justin?
I have. It's been a while, but I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen all 3 of them as well, but I'd be very excited to review on any of these movies. So... Yeah,
I've never seen them in context of having to do a podcast after, which always makes me look at the movies in closer detail and a little bit differently.
So by the time you hear this, the polls should be up on both Twitter and Facebook. So if you can't find the polls, let us know. We'll be sure and send it directly to you.
Yeah. So that does it for this episode, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Absolutely. If you guys wanted to find me, I'm running the Casual Cinecast Twitter at Casual Cinecast, or you can find me directly on Twitter at Mike from _5_2_7.
A lot of underscores.
I know. Sorry, I didn't plan on doing a podcast one day.
Yeah, and I guess if you want to find me, I run the Facebook Casual Cinecast page, and you can find me on Twitter at ChristDacko, DACKO, on Twitter.
Awesome. And if you want to talk to me, you can find me on Twitter at, I never know how to say it, but I think it's PTAX, PETAIX1, which is based on Pierre Etax. At least I assume I'm saying that right. I should probably have a Twitter handle that I can pronounce. But
your Twitter handle sucks.
Whatever.
We didn't think this through, guys.
No. You can also find me on Letterboxd under Mike from 5 to 7 as well.
Yeah. But I also respond to a lot of the Facebook stuff as myself with no crazy, stupid handle. So, yeah. You can contact us there. You can contact our podcast in general. on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Casual Cinecast. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and don't forget to leave us a iTunes review, a 5-star review, and with your thoughts on the show.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
You normally say bye-bye.
Wait, who?
You normally say bye. You see you next time. Bye.
Oh,
bye-bye.
Everybody's waiting for that bye.
I was.
All right, well, this is our joke outro, right?
Where